continued to grow. The day for guitar players only.com went live was my last day at the school. That was April Fool's Day, 2016.
Today's guest is a super interesting person. You are probably following along with him online. If not, go do it right now. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations. We are talking today with John Liebman, who has done many things in his career, which we talk about in this podcast. Lots of great stories. But what he has been focused on the last few years is building up this bass empire, shall we call it, called For Bass Players Only. We've had him on the podcast before, 2017, I think, something like that. It was like a good 400 episodes ago. And so definitely great to reconnect with John, who I think the world of, and to learn about what he's done recently with ForBassPlayersOnly.com. He's done a lot. He's done a lot in terms of changes. He's restructured the way he does interviews. He's combine things into a single offering. So we talk about that and then get into all kinds of great stories. I really, really had a good time chatting with John. He's spent time with, you name it, from Jaco Pastorius to just a ton of other artists, and you'll hear about that in this episode. If you're not following on with For Bass Players Only, what are you doing? You got to do it. Check out the website. That's linked up to in the show notes, or look for him anywhere on social media or on his website. Very cool. And let's get into our conversation with John Liebman. How's life, man?
Good. I'm sorry. I don't know what's up with the Zoom thing, but I think we've all been there, just looking at that gear going round and round and round and round.
Sure, yeah. I'm good with whatever. I can record through. I'm just calling you over Skype just so I can run my recorder. But this works fine on my end. Yeah.
All right.
Well,
how are things coming for the online summit?
They are good. We've got about we're coming up on 300 people registered, which is pretty great. Yeah, and the price goes up a little bit on the 14th, I think. So we'll probably get an influx of people there and before the event. So yeah, I don't know where we'll end up, but I'm sure it'll be well over 300, maybe even a lot more. So we'll see.
That's great. What were you hoping for? What were you expecting?
Oh man, when we were starting to talk about it, we were hoping for 20. So
no way.
But I don't know if you know Barry Green at all. Have you ever gotten to know Barry Green? Yeah. Okay, so
I interviewed him a couple of times.
I figured how would you not have? So Barry had he and I were just talking, and he had a bass event that had gotten canceled, like everything, and which had about 20 people. So we started talking, and I had been involved with it, and hey, why don't we try to do this online somehow? And then it morphed from just doing that to doing something bigger. So yeah, it's pretty cool though. It's
great that it's turning out the way it is. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it should be a good thing. So how have things been on your end? Have you been, I guess one of the nice things about teaching online in the way that you do is you can, in a lot of ways, probably kind of keep chugging along like normal.
Yeah, I did have a spike in sign-ups, but I attribute that to the things I would have done anyway. So I don't know how much of that is directly attributable to world events.
Right.
I did get a handful of people that went into pause mode, and I think one or two maybe even canceled specifically because of the COVID thing. But overall, I'm still growing, not quite as fast as I'd like to be, but we're definitely heading in the right direction. The other thing I did was I thought it would be a good opportunity. I have not taught privately one-on-one in almost 30 years. And
wow.
I thought, well, you know what? There's a good opportunity. People are home. People want to learn bass. So I opened that up, and I got about as many students as I could handle. And I did I did have one guy is a teacher, and he said he gets paid 11 months out of the year, so he's got to take a month off. But everybody else has stayed, and I'm thinking of opening it up again for just I'm only gonna make it eligible for my my members.
Yeah.
And because actually everybody that is studying with me privately is a member now of the Bass Players Only. One of them wasn't, and he ended up joining. I gave him a discount for that. So, long answer to your question. I'm holding my own. Things are chugging along in the right direction, and I'm not sure how much is directly attributable to the COVID thing, except that it gave me the idea to open it up for one-on-one private lessons that we do. Fortunately, everybody so far happens to have an iPhone, so I'm able to do it with FaceTime. And one guy says, well, let's do Zoom. That's better. And he initiated the call, so we did it that way. But there was a problem with the audio. So we did the video with Zoom and the audio with FaceTime.
Yeah.
Well, we got it done, though.
Well, I love FaceTime. I would call you on FaceTime right now, but the problem, I'm on the stupid Mac OS High Sierra, and I've been having these FaceTime crashing problems. So I would have to call you back like 19 times and then stitch the calls together into 3-minute chunks. And so I usually love using FaceTime, and I've had good experiences with FaceTime and audio too. It seems to the Apple Magic seems to work pretty well in terms of making it a decent enough sonic experience.
Yeah, it's still pretty incredible. We've got pretty spoiled with the things we complain about. But, but look what we're able to do. Man. It's pretty incredible.
Well, it's got to be interesting.
How are things on your end?
Well, it's funny because we bought a place right before the pandemic hit. And so I was planning on staying at home and getting things set up and all that anyway, these last few months. So it's now I would have been on the road and doing other things. So now it feels definitely like a different time. But it's interesting. It's making me wish I lived somewhere a little less urban, because San Francisco feels like a disaster movie still, just in terms of nobody's around and everything and boarded up, and it's so it's a little bit of a weird time for everybody, obviously, and it's certainly I've had more opportunity to dig into some computer projects and home projects and that kind of thing. So, but things are fine, chugging along.
Well, good.
Yeah. And I have no format for this at all. I don't know when the show starts. The recorder's going, and we'll just have started at some point. I don't really do an intro anymore. I'll intro you before, but I mean, it could be kind of cool. Like just and I love reconnecting. I know you reconnect with people all the time on for Bass Players Only. How many times have you had John Patitucci on, for example? A ton of times. But it's fun to like go back and think about what folks have been up to. And I was going back and I was watching some of your videos from several years ago, and I caught something from like 2015 about an online course from you. Was that right around when you started doing the membership site? Like, when did the membership side of things take effect for you? That
was at the end of March 2013.
Oh, wow. Okay. And
for Bass Players Only started on June 1st, 2009.
Okay.
Then I had the teaching stuff wasn't part of the Bass Players Only. It was actually a site called johnliebman.com.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people, including my wife, asked me, why don't you have them all on the same site? Why do you have two? And it was a long story, and I was talking to a bunch of investors and things like that, and I wanted to own it all. It probably told you this in the interview we did, 5 years ago?
It was a few,
somewhere yeah. With Syracuse or Ithaca, or where were we?
I think it was Ithaca. Yeah.
Ithaca.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, it wasn't Syracuse. I had written a handful of bass books, and they were doing well. And I got an email out of the blue from some kid, I think in England, in 2008. And he said, John Liebman, I love your books. I love your stuff. I love what you do. I looked all over the internet, and I can't believe there's no johnliebman.com. And I had like this flathead syndrome, smack my hand on my forehead. Like, oh, yeah, it's 2008. It's not too soon to start thinking about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I got some software and a couple of books, and there was Google and YouTube, whatever was available then, and just without having a clue what I was doing, put together a site, scrambled it together, launched it on March 1st, 2009, with no real business plan. I didn't even know what it was going to be, and I figured it would just be a place where I could sell my books, and I had a few audio samples, and then I was reading an article one night very shortly afterwards, and just learning about this whole internet space. This whole internet thing that kids are into these days, right? It was all so brand new to me. 11 years later, it still feels new to me. But somebody wrote in an article, there's got to be compelling content. There's got to be reasons for people to keep coming back. And that hit me pretty hard also. I went to bed that night. I woke up the next morning, and this name just popped into my head, for bassplayers.only.com. And I thought about it all the next day. And the day after that, I called up GoDaddy. I got the domain name, put together another website, again, without having a clue what I was doing or how to do it. But I just wanted a resource for bass players. So I had places that sold, places that made basses and amps and strings and effects and other stuff. So what I was doing, in effect, was sending people away from my website. I didn't even know about you can open things up in a window, and they'd come to my site, and then I would kind of invite them to leave to go somewhere else. What else did I have on there? I had upcoming events, concerts, and then eventually I started something about send us a video of you playing the bass. That turned out to be one of our most popular pages. But it was June 1st, 2009, I launched for Bass Players Only. And a friend of mine said, you're going to do interviews. And I had kind of thought about it, but I hadn't really given it that much thought. And I reached out. My very first interview ever was with Glenn Lech, who at the time was playing with Robin Trower. And he had done a lot of stuff. He did everything from Orville Redenbacher commercials to Robin Trower rock and a bunch of studio stuff. He was my very first interview. That was June 15th, 2009. And I have had one every single week since. I have never missed. Sometimes I had 2 per week. Sometimes I even had 3 per week. But we're hovering right around between 650 and 700 interviews. And every time I get the thought of, maybe I wonder if the emphasis should be here instead of there, and do I want to continue the interviews? And then I get like Cal Ripken syndrome. I want to keep that streak going. I don't want to do it just for the sake of it, but it's bringing in a lot of people. And that is kind of how For Bass Players Only started. And for a while, I had the 2 sites. I guess it was almost 4 years later, I started the online thing, and that was at johnliebman.com. So I'm running 2 websites, and then in 2016, I was in total world domination mode, and I launched another site called forguitarplayersonly.com, and I have a guy who's the managing editor. He said, we got to come out strong. We really got to come out swinging. So our very first interview for guitarplayersonly.com was Peter Frampton. And then 1 week later was Steve Miller. And then 1 week later was Carlos Santana. And we had one like the bass site every single week. We got Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Joe Walsh, Sweetfield Zappa, Neil Young, on and on. People at that level. And that's how it all started. I'm doing an interview every week. I'm doing the online thing, the online instruction. I'm still writing books. The guitar side didn't really get as much love as I had hoped, but that was going to be the next step. I was going for the big four, which is piano, guitar, bass, and drums. And I do have a logo for drummersonly.com, but I don't know if that'll ever see the light of day because the narrower I started to make my focus, the more quality I think the site has had. So in 2019, I ended up merging my three sites. So johnliebman.com became part of forbassplayersonly.com. So we have all the interviews plus all the online bass instruction and also news and features. And I started a blog about 3 years ago, and I had originally referred to it. We still refer to it now. That's the webmaster. We call it BTI, Beyond the Interview. And that was originally a way to get more traffic over to johnliebman.com to generate interest in the online bass instruction. But now that is all part of For Bass Players Only. I take one thing, one little kernel from each interview, one takeaway, and I write a blog about that. And that the blog, everything is on For Bass Players Only. So we promote that. That is a way to help people look at different ways of playing the bass, different bass playing problems that could be addressed, that could be solved, or just interesting things that somebody said about playing the bass. Have you ever thought of it doing this way? Have you ever thought of doing that? And oddly, the guitar interviews, because I had such gold there. Jeff Beck, Jimmy Bass, Carlos Santana, all the people that I mentioned. And I just was not administratively able, even with my team, to run another website. So if you go to forguitarplayersonly.com, that will take you to the guitar page on forbassplayersonly.com.
Wow.
And that did confuse some people.
Yeah.
But you know what? It is what it is. And I just, like I said, I didn't want to throw that stuff away because it's just incredible content. So it's interesting, though. Your audience, I think, will appreciate this because your audience is, I assume, bass players. If you subscribe to a bass site or even social media, something that's bass-oriented, and you see something about a guitar player, a bass player will go, okay, cool, yeah, there's a guitar player. If you belong to a guitar site, and you see something about a bass player, what is this? Get this out of here. I didn't sign up for this.
Yep.
And, I'll take the chance, go ahead, guitar player, send me hate mail or whatever it is. I'm just making an observation, and I think deep down in your heart you agree with me. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well,
so that's what's going on.
Yeah, it's
the main focus right now is on bass instruction. Everything is built around that. The interviews are built to enhance that. The features when we do those are to enhance that. The blog certainly is to enhance that. And it's all a matter of finding that focus and what problems do we solve? What is our business model? What is the purpose of forbassplayersonly.com? That's what we do. We are an online bass instruction site, and it's also a vehicle to sell my books. I was supposed to have my 10th book out this year. They were shooting for the Summer NAMM show, which got canceled, and I haven't talked to the publisher, Hal Leonard, in probably a month or two. So I don't know quite what the status is, but my 10th book will be out hopefully sometime in 2020. And I hope there will be a NAMM show next January.
Yeah.
But that's anybody.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, what's the topic? I remember you and I were talking about this before, but just remind me, what's the subject of the most recent book that you're working on that's going to be coming out?
Yeah, I have not announced this. I haven't told anybody.
Oh, okay.
Getting a first,
Okay.
exclusive. It is Play in the Style of. The book is called Funk Jazz Bass. And
Okay.
I selected 30 bass players, which in and of itself was a task to narrow it down to 30. I didn't have Jocko in there because there's tons of stuff, including one of my books, plus another book that I have a play on. Marcus Miller, Victor Wood, there's plenty of stuff for that. Not that there isn't also a lot of stuff for the people that I did choose, but I have people like Jeff Berlin, Nathan East, Abraham Laborio, Gary Willis, Carlitos Del Puerto, Victor Bailey, Stanley Clark, and a total of 30.
Wow.
So I'm real excited about that because it's interesting when I write music, when I write a groove or a piece of music, anything at all, and you probably are the same way. When you write something, you want to write the way you would play it, the way you would write it, but it took a lot of discipline to kind of be the way this person would play it, or this person would play it. And who else is there? Esperanza Spalding is in there. She's got some really interesting things. Jagged lines with unexpected chord changes and things like that. But, yeah, so that's what the book is about. It's called Funk Jazz Bass, and it'll be published, like all of my other books, by Hal Leonard. This will be my 10th book, and it will be out sometime soon. I'm pretty well done with my part. Just waiting until the world is ready for everyone to get back to work, and hopefully that will be sometime.
Yeah, cool. Well, I can't wait to check that out. And congratulations, 10 books. And oh my goodness, a streak of you're over 11 years or around 11 years of weekly interviews without missing a week. That is incredible, my friend. I have not achieved that, not by a long shot. So that is remarkable.
Oh, thank you. I can come back from a NAMM show with like 24, 25 interviews in the can.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there's something like Gerald Beasley's Bass Boot Camp, where I went last year, and maybe something like Lords of the Low End in New York, or I haven't been to the one in Ohio. You know what they call the bass gathering in Ohio?
What did they call that? I don't remember. Or I'm not sure if what is that?
Ohio.
Oh, there we go. Okay. oh dear. But I'm sure it's great.
Yeah, I've never been. And there used to be a bass player live.
Yep.
And, so that would be a great opportunity to sit down with Glenn Hughes and John Taylor and all those kind of people. That would, but it's a little more challenging now because those events are on. And they Warwick Bass Camp in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So I come back with like 2,000 interviews there. So it was a lot easier then. Now it's gotten more challenging. In the summertime, you can go to a concert, go backstage with for Dean White before the Earth, Wind and Fire show, or guys from the Doobie Brothers, or from Journey, or from the bands that come around. Oh, Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick, he has a 12-string electric bass that he let me play.
Oh,
so,
cool.
But even those things, I don't know what it's going to be. So doing the phone interviews, and I do still have a few in the can from NAMM. I'd like to get those up when the time is right. But, anyway, thanks. I was just trying to say it wasn't as hard as it seemed, given that there were all those bass functions to go to.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's harder than it used to be. But,
Well,
but I don't want to break. I don't want to break my.
Yeah, well, I took a cue from you, seeing how busy you were at NAMM, at some of those other events. And the last few years, I've started to pull John Liebman, and I bring my gear and I just like set up shop and I talk to 30 people, and it's a great way to do it. Now, of course, that's not happening. So I'm having a lot more conversations like this, but it's incredible. And I love this. When you started up a couple years ago, I guess it was doing these weekly blogs, like pulling out a nugget. And thank you for the write-up you did on me a few months back and doing that. It's super interesting to find that nugget. How do you find that bit? Just out of curiosity, are you going through an editing and then you're like, oh yeah, that's what I want to talk about? Or you're like making a mental bookmark when you're talking to the person? Or like how do you find those nuggets? I'm just curious.
First, I guess I would just go through and see what was interesting, but now it's all geared toward getting people interested in learning bass, because that's what they come to bassplayersonly.com to do, to get inspired and to learn bass. So now I specifically work that into the interview. I say a lot of people, more and more people are coming to bassplayersonly.com to learn how to play bass. What do you think is important for them to know? What should they know? What do you think every bass player should know or should concentrate on or should make sure they know how to do or make sure they learn? Something like that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will just start, they'll blurt out an answer right away, like they've been thinking about it, and other people are like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Well, let's see. But that's how I do it. I specifically ask the question, and then I will develop that. I have a really interesting interview coming up when it's next week, I think. Well, I don't know when this is going to air, but it's going to air. My radio background. I don't know when this is going to go live, this podcast, but I have an interview with a guy named Nick Villalobos.
Oh yeah, sure. He's been on my podcast a couple times. He's great.
Oh, great.
Love Nick. Yep.
Yeah, he plays with a string trio called Simply Three.
You got it. Mm-hmm.
And I asked him that question. What do you think is important? The first question I asked him, tell me about your musical upbringing. How were you first exposed to music? How did you become a bass player? And he says, classical. From the beginning, classical. Mm-hmm. And then later, that part of the interview, I said, so what do you think is important for a bass player to know? And here's a guy steeped in classical music. It's in his blood. It's ingrained in him. And he said, you got to play in the pocket, man. You got to groove. Yep. And I said, what? Mm-hmm. And he says, I can't even begin to tell you how many times. And he says, a lot of people, he said there's not a lot of syncopation in classical music, but there is a lot in pop music and a lot of classical players. If you can play something really fast, but you're not playing it in time or with a good time feel, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And I was telling him about when I was in the orchestra at University of Miami. We were playing a Stravinsky piece. I think it was Petrushka we were playing. But the conductor called everybody in the orchestra into his office one at a time to play for him. And, Stravinsky, there's some syncopation there.
Yeah.
There's some weird meter changes and things like that. And I'm playing, 5, 8, 7, 8, 3, 4, 2, going. And the conductor just looked at me afterwards and he asked me, are you a jazz major? I said, yes, I am. He says, I thought so. The jazz players can play pretty much anything. And I think the classical world, I don't want to get in trouble for saying anything that may be ignorant, and I guess I am somewhat ignorant on the subject. I did go to the classical route. I studied with Max Janowski, who played in the Detroit Symphony, and I played in orchestra and symphony band, all that stuff. But I also remember being in music theory classes in college, and the teacher, the professor, would insist that we have some kind of very, very basic piano proficiency, which I think is important. Mm-hmm. And there was one guy in the class, and he could play classical piano. He could play Liszt and Chopin and Rachmaninoff and all this kind of stuff. He could not play 1-4-1-5-1 on the piano. And I don't know if it's the way. I'm not trying to generalize or stereotype classical people. I'm just talking from my experience that I don't think it's healthy to learn how to look at black dots on the page and then just push buttons without really knowing what you're doing, without analyzing, without knowing the theory, without knowing what you're playing. Because otherwise, you're a robot. You're a machine. And yes, okay, you can play expressively and you can, put your heart into it once you know the music. But do you really know what you're doing? Do you really know what you're playing? And I'm not saying all jazz players do and all classical people don't, but it's just an observation, and I think it's something important to know, to understand what you're playing and why these notes go together, how they go together, and I think that makes you a better all-around, well-rounded musician, regardless of what instrument you play and regardless of what genre you play.
Yeah.
Play in the pocket, make it groove, even if it's classical.
Well, Nick, I guess that's not surprising that Nick said that, knowing him. I mean, what an interesting guy, and talk about inventing a career for themselves, what they've done. And it's so interesting, I have, I'm kind of like an amateur jazz player, but I have lots of friends that have lived more in that world, and just the level of music theory knowledge that you just have to work on that is just generally much higher than your average, classical player. I think it's safe to say. I remember back in Chicago, there's a musician named Cliff Colnut who was a big jingle guy back in the 80s and into the 90s, but also, interestingly, was the conductor for the contemporary music series of the Chicago Symphony and the conductor for the DePaul Orchestra. And it was really interesting because we would see his scores sometimes. He'd pass along his scores, and it'd be jazz chords. Everything would be analyzed. It'd be like A flat, 7, it was, and so it didn't matter what piece he was looking at. Everything was analyzed, jazz notation, which I thought was really interesting.
That's great. He probably loved guys like Ravel.
Yeah.
Those guys. They went crazy over American jazz. Heard it.
I guess I forgot, or maybe I didn't realize you went to University of Miami. That place has an outstanding reputation as a jazz school. At least it does these days. Is that what drew you down there, or what drew you to that school?
I went there and it hit the spot with me. I looked at 7 schools before I chose that one.
Yeah.
And when I got my bachelor's degree from Wayne State University in Detroit, I was actually the very first ever graduate of the Jazz Studies program, Wayne State University. And I said, I'm never going to any school of any kind ever again.
Right.
6 months later, I'm looking at schools. I wanted to go to the Musicians Institute. I'm not sure if it was called that back then, but it was the Bass Institute of Technology, which is right in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And they have BIT, GIT, PIT, I think was for percussion, GIT was for guitar, then they had both. But now they just call them Musicians Institute. Jeff Berlin taught there. Tim Bogert from Vanilla Fudge was there. You might know Bob Magnuson. Do you know Bob?
Yep, absolutely.
San Diego now. He retired. He played with Buddy Rich. But, I really wanted to go to that school, and my dad said, make sure that's the school for you. It would, if you end up, if that's the best place for you, fine, but, why limit yourself? And I thought, well, okay, that makes sense. So I went to Boston. I looked at Berklee College of Music, which was odd because at the time, I'm pretty sure Berklee was strictly an undergraduate college. But just because of the name and the reputation, I thought it was worth checking out anyway. So I looked at Berklee, and then I went, I think it was right around the corner with New England Conservatory of Music.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Miroslav Vitouš was there at the time or another time. And then I think on the same trip, on my way home, I stopped at Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York. And then I came home, and then I went to Indiana University. Hung out with, do you remember David Baker?
Oh, of
Is he ever on
course.
your radar?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I have his book or one of his books floating around here somewhere. Yeah, of course. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. So I sat down with him in his office, and I checked out the school, and then two teachers you probably heard of, Stuart Sankey and Murray Grosvenor.
Oh, yeah.
I was stunned when I went there to Indiana University, and I saw there were 5 orchestras, 90 people in each orchestra. The kids learned their parts, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne State was good for me at the time, but it wasn't a big, thriving university music school with tons of players all over. It was kind of small, but I learned a lot. There was a great faculty there, Dennis Keeney and Matt Michaels and Jim Hartway. I studied conducting and tech. We called it analysis techniques of music.
Mm.
And then I went to where did I leave off? Yeah, then I went to Hollywood to look at the Bass Institute of Technology, and I hung out there. Actually, they let me come for like 2 or 3 days in a row, just check it out, and, sit in on classes, and talk to the students. But I was really sold on Indiana. I thought I'm going to just see this through. Then I went to North Texas State.
Whoa.
And they call it what do they call it? University of North Texas.
Yeah, UNT. Right, sure.
Yeah, and I think the guy's name was Ed Rainbow, the bass teacher. I don't know if that name ever crossed your radar. And then Dan Hurley, I think, was the keyboard instructor. Neil Slater was the big band instructor. And I had always heard about that school, and I don't know, I just didn't feel any magic there for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of, at the time, sort of almost like a big band factory.
Right.
Which would not have been a bad thing for me, but I don't know what it is emotionally. I just couldn't get excited about it. And then I went to University of Miami. Okay, this is my last stop. I'll check it out. And I got there and I said, whoa, this is what I started out looking for in the first place. I didn't set out to embark on a classical career. It's great that Murray Grosvenor, Stuart Sankey, those guys, and all the things that are in Indiana. Well, that's great, but this is what I started out looking for. And they had a great jazz program. And rounding it out, Lucas Drew was there.
Oh,
and I
yeah.
studied privately with him. And small groups, I'm in improv classes, I'm taking private lessons, and I started to gig like a maniac. I was doing, not right away, but eventually like between 400 and 500 gigs a year.
Whoa.
In Miami.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I became the house basis at the Hirschfeld Theater on Miami Beach. So I'm playing 8 shows a week there, and I would go straight from Miami Beach to Little Havana to the Copacabana.
Mm-hmm.
And we do 4 shows a week there, and I'd get home like 4 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. And then, Monday night was off, so I watch Monday Night Football or something just to be a normal person. But, or sometimes I'd get an oddball thing, like a weird club date on a Monday, or maybe on a Sunday night. Yeah, I think Sunday nights we did. Did we have 4-show, 5-show weekends? I don't know, whatever it was.
Wow.
But, I settled on Miami because the atmosphere, the faculty, the curriculum, the other students, it was a good move for me. I'm looking at my son now, who's 20, and he made the commitment a lot earlier. He's at Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
He's on a scholarship. He's a guitar player, and he keeps me on my toes talking about things with theory and terms that I'm not even familiar with. And, what's allowed and what's not allowed. And, but he even knows. In jazz, what do you do when you make a mistake? You play it again, and then you play it again and again. It sounds like you did it on purpose.
Yeah, for sure.
but he dove in right from the beginning. When I went to school, actually before I went to Wayne State, I went to the University of Michigan. They have a campus in Dearborn, which is just outside Detroit. And I started just taking the basic college stuff, English, science, math, social studies, whatever you take. But I was taking music theory, music history, and then one of the professors, it was my theory professor, he was directing the University of Michigan Dearborn Vocal Chamber Ensemble, and he recruited a bunch of us into that. I never really fancied myself as a singer, but it was, I had a lot of fun there. We would perform and we would rehearse, and I actually did an arrangement. He came up to me after one of our rehearsals. He says, "John, does it bother you or does it offend you at all as a person of the Jewish faith that we're singing all these Christian songs?" And I said, "No, not at all. It's music. It's fun. I love it." And he says, "Well, why don't you write an arrangement of something in Hebrew or something in Yiddish, and we'll sing it?" I said, "Hey, thank you." And I did, and my parents came to the concert, and I think there were 16 of us who were singing, "I've been British, Jack, Brent, the Fire Bell, und die Rebel learn to claim a Kindle.
That's great.
I haven't thought of that in a long time. But, so I guess it was around toward the end of my freshman year, or maybe it's my sophomore. I don't know. It was a long time ago. And like any university in any academic environment, each department wants to know that they are strong, they are vibrant, and they look good in the eyes of the administration. So he was trying to get people to declare a concentration in music. Mm. And I figured, well, yeah, why not? So I did, and it's not like today where you can play pretty much any instrument. I had this mindset, and it was probably valid at the time, that I had to have a quote-unquote legitimate instrument to study as a music major. And I had played guitar for a long time. I played electric bass for, at that time, I don't know, I guess a few years. And I figured, well, I'm going to choose either classical guitar or classical bass. In my head, it had to be classical something. And I ended up choosing the bass and went to my old high school, and Mr. Brown, the music teacher, and I told him I was going to start studying bass, and can I borrow a bass from the high school? He says, take this one. No, take this one. This one's better. I said, okay, thanks very much. So I started there, and then I ended up going over to Wayne State for the jazz program. And I think the rest you know. Wow. Most of the rest you know.
I can only imagine the culture. I don't know, culture shock is the right word, but the difference is like heading from Michigan down to Miami and like gigging till 4 a.m. I mean, having spent so many years living in Chicago myself, and then going down to Miami to do a little work every once in a while. I remember just like my jaw dropping open at like Miami. There you are playing in Miami Beach. That what a juxtaposition of worlds.
Yeah, very much. I got indoctrinated to it, and I just started doing it, and I was getting called for shows, and well, I have to admit this, and I don't mind telling you now, 30 some years later, but I think a lot of the reason that I was able to do stuff that I ended up doing and getting called so much is because at the beginning, I was getting called and sent on these pretty big shows that what I'm trying to say is I think looking back on it, that people thought I was better than I thought I was. They thought I was like in a higher league, where back in Detroit I would have considered myself, well, not at the level where I could do this. I only do this. Mm-hmm. And it was totally a sink or swim situation. And but I'm looking at things like, why does every page say BAJO? What does that mean?
That's awesome.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, how come at the end we always play something called Bose, BOWS? What is Bose? What is it? Oh, the guy comes out and he takes a bow, and we play oh, bow. I mean, it was at that level, that kind of greenness trying to be modest and realistic as well. So that was a part of it. And doubling up, play electric and upright. And playing bass rather than classical guitar. You can play in orchestras, you can play weddings, you can be studio, you can do, you can do all kinds of stuff, Latin gigs.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do most of that with guitar too, but it's not a traditional orchestral instrument. So if there's a guitar in an orchestra, it's usually a featured instrument with a concerto or something. I'm glad I chose the bass. It made sense for me at the time, and there's certainly a lot to do with it, and there's overall pretty good demand for it. When I was coming up in the 80s, that was when I was doing most of my work, and I thought the guitar players fared pretty well during those days, and I thought the saxophone players fared pretty well in those days. The drummers and the bass players didn't get quite as much work as normally would have, like a decade earlier, or even a decade later, because of the all the synthesized stuff.
Sure.
I still work, still managed to do 400 to 500 gigs a year, so I guess it wasn't that bad. But I did a fair amount of recording and studio work too. But it would have been a lot more had it been during a different era.
God,
but I hated the music in the 80s. I hated the 80s during the 80s.
Did you really?
Yeah, I hated the music, the clothes, the 90s I thought were fun. I liked the 90s. It just felt good. Seinfeld, and it was an enjoyable period for me. But 70s, looking back on it, I was pretty young, but like the Brady Bunch outfits.
Yep.
You remember Herb Carlick on WKRP?
Of course.
Guy with the really wide lapels.
Yep.
You're getting me to think about a lot of things I haven't thought about in a long time there.
Well, coming from Detroit too, like, man, what a musical tradition that place has, and and even just even like recently you did, it was one of those concerts that you went to backstage. Maybe this was 6 months ago. Was that the Earth, Wind and Fire bassist that was coming through town at Detroit that you interviewed? Is that what I'm thinking of recently?
Well, I've done quite a few. For Dean White with Earth, Wind and Fire, that particular interview was a couple of years ago.
Okay, it was something more recent, but it was making me think, like, look, how cool that must be for John even now to like get to go and see concerts like that in Detroit. And I don't know, it just got me thinking about the whole Motown and just the rich musical tradition in so many ways. I mean, orchestral too. It was one of the country's great orchestras too. Just so many good players, melting pot of musical styles, and just what a cool place to come out of.
Yeah, there's definitely a very rich musical heritage in Detroit, stemming back 60 years.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, I did not come back to Detroit for the music, and I was never really that deeply ensconced in the music scene here as I was in Miami or even in L.A. I came back for different reasons. I came back for business reasons, and my dad had a business and invited me to come in and run it, which I did. Well, not from the first day, but I spent 26 years there at the school, and I was it was a school for media arts, so radio and TV broadcasting, graphic design, and digital media arts.
Wow!
And I came back actually. I was in Miami, and this was 1990. And I had all these visions. I was doing, all those gigs and all those shows and everything. And I thought, well, this can't be it. I felt like this is about all I can do here. So I have always had these visions of showing up in New York or L.A. with my bass in one hand and my toothbrush in the other. Okay, here I am. Right. And I did go out to L.A. for a while, and I had a very good experience there. But 6 days after I got there, I was playing at the Pantages Theater with with the Chiffons on a show with Gary Puckett and Union Gap and Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Wow!
And I was playing a lot of other oldies shows. Well, I hooked up with a band that did a lot of work with the Dick Clark agency. So we're playing with the Drifters, the Platters, the Coasters, the Chiffons, the Shirelles, Baby, all these people. And I did do some jazz gigs, and I'd go to jam sessions, and I met a lot of people, and I was writing a lot. My first books were coming out around then. So, I was doing a lot of stuff there. But I came to Detroit because I really wanted to be in business. And I felt like I was getting old, and I certainly wasn't old 30 years ago. I'm old now, but I was 30 years ago. And it's like, 7, 8 o'clock in the evening, I don't feel like going out. I'm tired.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing for a musician. But I wanted to be more a writer, and a arranger, a producer, that kind of thing. And being in business, I would have started some kind of business, and I figured, well, a true business person, what's the difference? What the nature of the business is? A business is a business, and I had an opportunity to come in. Well, actually, the first time I came to Detroit, I came back to Detroit, rather. My brother had started a production company, so he was writing music and doing some jingles and industrials and that kind of thing. And I pictured myself after, when I left Miami, the reason I left Miami is I pictured myself working together with him, playing, writing, and recording music 8 hours a day, and then at night going home. And on Saturday night, going to the movies and going to dinner and doing things that normal people do. Right?
not playing 400 to 500 concerts. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was in the same building as the school. So my dad was down the hall, and I just gravitated to the school. And a few years later, I became the director, then the executive director, then the president, and then the chairman, and the CEO, and going to Washington and meeting with our elected officials about our students and our schools. And I spent most of my time dealing with the bankers and the accountants and the licensing board and the accrediting body and the national organization and the Department of Education, and got very involved in all the boards at the city level, the county level, the state level, and the federal level. So I was totally immersed in the school business, higher education. And it just came a time I had started this little company on the side, and I was still writing books, and the company took off. My little company, more than I expected. I got a lot more attention, and I had an opportunity. So I left. That was in 2016, and that's when I continued to grow. Actually, the day for guitar players only.com went live was my last day at the school. That was April Fool's Day, 2016.
Oh, wow.
And,
I knew you had that background in education. I remember.
You were talking about Detroit. That's what.
Yeah, but I remember looking at maybe before we were chatting a few years back for the podcast, and I knew you had all these books from Hal Leonard. You're like a name that I'd heard of for years, and then I was actually reading your bio, and then there was like this deep education and all this. I was like, what? It's like super interesting. So there was quite a bit of overlap there with For Bass Players Only, and then what you had been doing. So you were you were running on all cylinders, even if you weren't playing 400 or 500 gigs a year. That's still a pretty full life.
Yeah, it was. I remember what your original question was. It was then I got married right in the middle of all that, and my wife was a widow, and she had 2 very young girls. Mm-hmm. Rebecca was 5, Emily was 2. By the time we got married, they were 6 and 3. And then, so then I adopted the girls. I got married. I took over the business. And, so a lot was going on all at once. By the way, Rebecca's been married for 6 years, and I have 2 little granddaughters.
Wow.
and
that's great.
Emily is now, how old is Emily? 26. And then we had one together. That's Adam. I think you may have met. He's the one that's at Berkeley. And I have an older son now, Josh, who's I've always had him.
Right.
He's the oldest. He's from my first marriage. Again, I don't know when this is going to air or be published. But
yeah, relatively soon. I'm not. Yeah. Wow.
But there's the scene. I guess there's somewhat of a scene here, and there are guys that are working. People that are playing stuff. But in Miami, there was a Latin show here, a gig here, a club date there, a Broadway thing here, and writing. That was a mania. Here, we've got, I don't know, about 3 theaters, I think. There's the Fox Theater, the Masonic Temple Theater, and the Opera House. And in the summertime, there are a couple of the outdoor venues. Mm-hmm. And other than that, I never really pursued the wedding thing. It's okay once in a while. It's not really why I got into music, but it's fun to do once in a while, especially if they're good players on it. But it's not why I got into music, but it's something not beneath me to go. I'm still going to give it my all and play the best I can and give it what it needs. I had a lot of fun at my son's wedding. We're playing, and right after the ceremony, we walked into the cocktail hour, and the band is playing The Chicken. Chaco, right?
That's awesome.
So I borrowed the bass from the bass player, and then Adam, my son, came, sat next to me, played the guitar. Then my best friend, who for like almost 50 years, he's a drummer. He sat down at the drums, and then my brother sat down at the piano, and the four of us were playing The Chicken. I mean, how often does that happen, that they're playing The Chicken?
Yeah.
And then they're playing Call Me Al at the, during the reception. Like, I got to get it. So I'm playing the Takeshi Kumalo last solo.
That's
and
great.
Adam sang, too. He sang their first dance, Something by the Beatles. So I played, and my brother played with that, too. But I mentioned weddings, so I got off on the tangent there. But
yeah,
it's getting back to Detroit. There's a handful of major places to play, a small handful, although Detroit has really come a long way. I went to see The Who last year, almost exactly a year ago, and I thought I was going to see 4 guys. Right? The band itself was actually 7 people, but they had like a 60-piece orchestra, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing? Hey, Walter, hey, Dan, how you doing?" I knew like everybody in the orchestra, so I called up the union or somebody in the union to say, "Hey, I'm here. I'd love to do that kind of stuff."
Oh, wow.
But, I went to interview John Button, who's the bass player. He did a lot of work with, was it with Pete Townsend or Roger Daltrey? He was with one of them for a long time. So he was the bass player in The Who, so I lined up an interview with him. That was really something. That was quite a surprise. But like I said, I thought I was going to see 4 guys perform, and I saw like 70 people.
Wow.
Pretty spectacular. But that's just an example of some of the kinds of gigs that there are. And Detroit has really come a long way. I mean, you ask anybody from Detroit for 30 years, they've been saying, it's getting better. It's getting better. But it's really grown quite a bit just in the last decade. There are a few very powerful businessmen that were very determined to do something, and all kinds of restaurants and shops and things like that. But what really got my attention was I went to I cover all kinds of different music. It was Luke Bryan. Brian or Bryant, I don't remember. You know who he is, right? A country guy.
Yeah.
And we're going, and I go into the parking structure, and it's $40 to park.
Oh.
And that's when it hit me. Like, oh, okay, who does Detroit think it is now? But they're acting like a major city, and there used to be 2 million people in Detroit.
Yeah.
Now there's what, 500,000, 600,000, I don't know. But a lot of the young people are moving down there, and there is an awful lot of growth. And the Lions never seem to get in.
Well, I look forward to going back again. It's been maybe 6 or 7 years since I was in Detroit, but I had a great time. My wife was interviewing at University of Michigan, and so we did a little exploring of Michigan at the time, and went over to Detroit and walked around downtown. And yeah, it's been fun, kind of following along with how things have changed in those years since. Just news articles and the like. But it's pretty cool, man.
Did you? talk to any of the faculty people at the University of Michigan? Like Bob Hurst comes to mind. Were you just along for the ride and doing whatever you wanted? Or
yeah. I wasn't doing any sort of podcast kind of stuff on that trip, but I have connected with different Michigan people over the years. So, but not Bob Hurst, but that wasn't, I didn't get any good stuff for the blog that trip, but next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
What other Michigan people have you?
Oh, well, I just chatted with Larry Hutchinson, a longtime Detroit Symphony member. Yeah, love Larry.
Yeah.
And
I was going to mention it because I need to interject here.
No,
I
please.
want to hear it well. I was in the gym, right, about a mile away from my house, and this was years ago. And I hear some guy in the locker room talking about bass and about symphony, and I introduced myself, and I said, "Hey, how would you like to be interviewed for my website?" And the guy's wearing a towel, right? And he says, "Now?" I said, "No, not." But he was very friendly. As a matter of fact, his name came up. I interviewed Bonnie Raitt's bass player. His name is Hutch Hutchinson. And I said, if you Google Hutch or Hutchinson on the site, his interview will come up. Or maybe Larry Hutchinson's interview will come up from the Detroit.
Oh, that's funny.
But, I don't know Larry real well, but I met him. And I've seen him in a towel, and I have interviewed.
I love that. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm trying to think of who else. The current principal bass of Detroit. It's mostly I chat with a lot of people in the jazz world, but it's definitely I skew classical. I should probably change that. But Kevin Brown, who's the principal bass right now of Detroit, and then Alex Hanna, who's principal bass of the Chicago Symphony now, but he was principal bass of Detroit before that. And at least a couple other people. I'd have to think a little bit on it, but love it. Love to get back. It reminds me there's so many similarities between Detroit and Chicago. I love spending time. I've lived in Chicago 23 years, so lots of time there. But I also have really enjoyed spending time in Cleveland and Detroit, and there are definitely similarities between all three of those cities and differences. But
I was born in Cleveland. I lived there for the first 7 years of my life. My earliest childhood memories of Cleveland. And when I was touring with Into the Woods with Cleo Lane, we played in Cleveland. I have always enjoyed going back there. And then the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is only 3 hours away, so we've done that a couple of times on day trips. But yeah, you mentioned Cleveland. I perk up. I remember it well. And the Into the Woods tour, Stephen Sondheim and all that was like 1989, I think. And we played at one of the big theaters there. It was very enjoyable too.
Yeah. Wow. What a cool tour to do. What a cool musical to take on the road. I've only played it once or maybe twice, but that must have been a blast.
I played it. Let's see, 14. I don't know, in the hundreds of times.
Okay, maybe.
That is. Don't tell anybody this, Jason, but this between you and me, that's when I got really good. In the orchestra pit. You know when your entrance is. You know when you have to play. And then what I used to like to do, I would do my crossword puzzle. Then at intermission, I would swap with the bassoon player. And I'd work on his puzzle, and he'd work on mine. And what I remember was I used to get the USA Today puzzle because no matter what city we're in tomorrow, I can see yesterday's answer in the paper. That was a fun tour. We went to Denver, Tulsa, Des Moines, St. Louis. Where did we go? Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, Wilmington, Delaware.
Wow.
I don't know, a few other places. That was a great experience for me. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Man.
Learned so much, too, about theater and production. I remember seeing one of the actresses, and I remember thinking, wow, she really has beautiful hair. And then one day I'm wandering around, there's a prop room, there's oh, here's the wig room. Oh, there's her hair. Hey, that's not even her real hair.
Oh, man.
Yeah, she used to get stopped in airports. She was on, I don't know, one of the soap operas, like One Life to Live or something like that. People would recognize her in airports and come up and ask for her autograph. I had never seen it, but no, it was great. I had a lot of fun hanging out with some of the people were jazz players, some of them were classical players, and I haven't really kept in touch. Actually, when the movie came out about 2-3 years ago, Into the Woods,
Mm-hmm.
I thought, hey, you know what? Now we have Facebook and all the stuff we didn't have. I tried reaching out to a handful of people, and I did make contact with some of them. I said, hey, you know, what are you doing? It's been an awfully long time. How's it going? So that was fun. Plus, seeing it in the theater, boy, you get so much more out of the story when you can see what's going on. Because when you're in the orchestra pit, you know, it's very different.
Oh yeah, what a vastly different experience that is. It's so fun, Matt. John, you should do at an ISB convention or something. You should just do a session on your life. You're such a good example of like go from 400 to 500 shows a night, and like, you know, everything that you've done, and then writing all the books, and then this like really cool, I don't know if pivot's the right word, but like the whole everything you built with for bass players only, and the online learning, and the 600 plus interviews, whatever number you're at this point. It's really cool. I think so many people would at any point in their career would really, because I mean I kind of know, we've chatted several times, but I'm just sort of realizing, man, you have done a lot of different things at a really high level.
Well, it's very kind of you. If you want, maybe you're a big shot with ISB and these other organizations. Maybe you could do just like an interview, like we're doing now, only in front of an audience. I'd be happy to share my experience or whatever. Just one correction: you said 500 gigs a night. That's not what I said.
I know.
Said
Right.
Gigs a year.
Yeah, that would be even for you. That would be hard. Oh man. Well, hey, John, I appreciate it. I know where to send people, not multiple websites. There's just one now. And congratulations on getting all that wired up to all go to forbassplayersonly.com. I can only imagine how complicated that must have been, but the site looks great. And I love it. I love getting the emails from you and open them up. And I'm like, oh, who John talked to? Oh, what let's see what John had to say or got from the interview. And I love everything you do, but I really like your slant or your take on like what stuck out, that nugget, you know, that is, I just think it's really interesting how you do that. So just congratulations. Anything else you want to tell people besides the obvious? And I'll link up to, you know, the site and social media and everything, but anything else you want to get out there?
Well, I'm trying to make forbassplayersonly.com the best I can make it, and I love getting feedback from the students, and we're right now in pretty much every state in the U.S. Got somebody from Idaho last night. I'm not sure if we had anybody from Idaho before, and we're in about 50 countries worldwide.
Wow!
So I'm trying to listen to what the people have to say and what they want to learn, and I'm trying to avoid adding content just for the sake of content, because that could be overwhelming to some people. I'm trying to share my experience and what I know about the bass and what you need to do and what you need to not do, and just trying to make it the best bass site I can make it, and the best bass instruction site I can make it. So I've got all kinds of things that I have in mind that I am planning to add. Right now I'm writing a soft rock course.
Oh, wow.
I aim to get up in June of 2020. So again, whenever this goes up, I have a date of June 29th in mind. That's the deadline. And some more stuff for 6-string bass, and some other thoughts, maybe like a smooth jazz course, and something like that, just from the
Yeah.
very beginning.
Yeah.
And other things that are just like features, like, I think you can download a PDF of every lesson. And with all my 30 years with Hal Leonard, you got to have tablature. Well, I'm thinking of adding a non-tab version of those PDFs, particularly in the sight reading category, which I think will probably be the first place I'd start.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I have started the six-string courses are with Joe Santerre, who's been at Berklee College of Music for 30 years. I have some other people that I'm talking to right now. I've done the 99% of the courses and the lessons, whether it be jazz and blues, rock and metal, funk, R&B, reggae, Latin, those types of things, plus beginners, easy, soloing, jazz interpretation, scales and theory, sight reading, those kinds of things. And I'm starting to make myself more like the nucleus and surround myself with other people who specialize in things that I'm not particularly known for, maybe two-handed tapping or advanced upright playing, or I don't know, maybe even something with the bow. I'm trying to think what your audience might be interested in. Things like that, double thumbing.
Yeah.
I can't do everything. Plus, it'd be good to add that dimension to it. You asked me anything else. I thought maybe I would just touch on some of the things that I have in mind for the future. And I guess I've dug a hole for myself here. I've got to continue doing these weekly interviews. And you were up there just in January, so it's a little too soon for you, but we'll definitely plan on doing a follow-up with you, and especially as you continue to have big-time, far-out news to share. I'd be happy to share that with our audience here. And, if I could say one thing, your audience, I think, is for the most part, double bass, upright bass. And I don't know where the balance lies between classical and jazz. I suspect it might lean a little more towards the classical side. Am I correct there or no?
Man, I don't know. I think it might be that's more the way I lean, but I hear from a lot of jazz players, and everything I put out that is more on the jazz side of things is gets a lot of interest. So I don't know in terms of the audience, but I think there's a little bit of everything.
All right. Well, what I was getting at is if there's anything I can add to the wonderful content that you have, that you impart to bass players, if there's something that's a little more on the electric bass that they'd like to learn, or if there's a particular style they're interested in, or something else that I may not have even thought of, then I think you and I could potentially create some real synergies there, and offer the best of both worlds to all the other bass nerds and bass geeks like you and me.
Hey, that sounds great. That for sure. No, I love it. And let's have this be the second of many chats when the new book comes out or whatever. So the offer right back at you, John. Let's keep the conversation going, because you've got a lot of cool projects, both with new books and what you're doing on the site. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think people can sign up for a trial on the site too, right? So if they want to dip a toe in.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
15-day free trial and totally risk-free.
Cool.
So take a chance. You have nothing to lose.
All right. John, what a pleasure. Great way to end a Friday on my end. So I appreciate it.
Wait a minute. For me, it's not even 5 o'clock. You're 3 hours early. Ending your day already?
No. I've been having so much fun chatting with you that I have transported myself to East Coast time. So no, it's just after lunch here. So my day
nice
got a little more of the day, but not much probably. So
hey, listen, seriously, keep doing what you're doing. It's great. I love getting to meet.
John, you rock. the place to go to learn more, of course, forBassPlayersOnly.com. I love the camaraderie that John has with the guests he has on, the shared history he has with so many of the guests. He's the best kind of interviewer because he's been in the business for so long. He's had so many varied experiences, and he has this personal connection to these artists that really shine through. So he does much more than just the interviews, but he's done so many, and they're just really, really well done. I helped out John. I think I was holding the mic or the camera. I don't remember what I was doing back in 2017 at the International Society of Bassists Convention, and it was fun to see him work. Always fun to connect with somebody who does something similar, though different, but we certainly have probably more similarities than differences in terms of what John does and what I do. And I love talking shop and seeing what other people are doing and drawing inspiration from that. And it's a big old world out there, folks. It's really cool to see what John does and to have some overlap and to be able to talk and laugh and learn from each other. So I love it. John, you rock. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. If you are new to the podcast, welcome. We've got a lot that you can dig through in the archives at contrabassconversations.com. If you just want to follow along with us on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, we got that all linked up. We got a YouTube channel that is relatively active. I'm trying my best. I'm filming a bunch of GoPro videos on my head right now. So if you want to see that and hopefully not get motion sickness, you can check that out, youtube.com/contrabassconversations. Or just go to our website. You will find that. We do an email list. We have an email list, and we send out a weekly newsletter that is full of all sorts of bassy goodness that people send me. And a lot of people send me a lot of stuff. I've been in this game for a long time, and a lot comes across my virtual desk, and I put out the best for you in that weekly email. So contrabassconversations.com/email will get you to the form, or just go to the site and you will have no problem signing up. So I enjoy doing these. I hope you enjoy listening to these. We're enduring a heat wave here in San Francisco, so I need to escape this outro and open up the door so I can get some air circulation for me and the dog and everybody. But I want to thank the team first. Thank you so much to Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Trevor Jones, Krista Copper, and Mitch Mooring. And Mitch makes a beautiful bass in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, just east in Kilgore, Texas, which I really want to visit. It sounds like a charming town. He won a silver medal for tone at the last International Society of Bassists Convention, and he's just an awesome person. Learn more at mitchmooring.com. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.